My name is Anna Buer, and I'm the Director of Program Compliance and Product Strategy for Wisconsin Literacy. And I'm joined by Jamie Copes, the Manager of Tutor Training and Digital Literacy here at Wisconsin Literacy. So we are not AI experts, but Jamie and I use it, and we're here to guide you through what we've learned. And we're going to share a few stories with you this morning as we go through about best practices for using AI, both in your classroom or your office. We recognize that we may have instructors on the call, but we also have program administrators as well. We're going to talk about checking for bias and accuracy, protecting privacy, and what to do when AI doesn't get it right. And please be prepared for a bit of interaction, and we will go into breakout rooms at the end of the session today. And so we hope that you're prepared to share your camera and unmute yourself, but please participate in whatever way that you are comfortable.
I want to start this morning with gathering your experiences so far with AI. So I want to invite you to describe a recent situation in which you used AI. If you could do this in the chat, and I realize it takes a little time to type when we're asking you for kind of a story, so we will give you that time. But if you could, as you're sharing, think about and maybe share some of these details. Which tool did you use? What did you ask the AI tool to create for you? And were you satisfied with the results? And if you haven't had a recent experience, we'd like to hear that too. These are great. Please keep them coming and share your experiences, recent experiences using AI. As Anna said, we're seeing a great mix of using AI for instructional purposes, but also program administration. I saw like different ways to say things on a grant application, marketing messages. Anna, anything you're seeing that you want to highlight?
I was just going to say, it looks like most people are saying Chat GPT, but somebody did point out that using Google Translate is also using AI.
Anybody use Copilot? I have yet to use Copilot, so I want to give that a try.
Ooh, and I see a personal experience in here of using it to help select a mattress. That is a consumer application. Love it. Oh, and Google Translate, not just for using it for math problems also. Great.
That's a nice question. Yes, we could get a copy of these ideas. We'll send a follow-up email, and within that email, we can copy these ideas from the chat. I love that. All right. If you are still sharing in the chat, continue to do so. Anna and I are going to share some of our own experiences.
So recently, Wisconsin literacy staff did an activity where we wrote poems about Wisconsin literacy, following a prompt that we use in our adult education literacy training that we do. Anyway, so I was tasked with putting these lovely poems onto a PowerPoint slides to present back to staff. And so I wanted to illustrate them. So here, a compass was the mascot for Wisconsin literacy. And so I was I believe I was within Canva, and trying to create a campus or a compass mascot. So I asked the AI feature within Canva for it. And here we have two W's, two Wests on the campus. I thought, no, this is not right. So, I asked to generate again, and then I got this image, which I'm not even sure what we've got here for East. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe that AI cannot create a compass rose. And then I realized I was just overcomplicating things, and I just went to search images within Canva, and here it came up with a very nice compass rose. So this is an example of as I was trying to create something with AI was not able to do it, but all I had to do was search their existing images and could have found a perfectly suitable illustration for what I was trying to do. So I want to share another example. So this is another poem that one of our staff created. And here the mascot was a person dancing with a book. And so this time I started just with the images. And so I typed in the images search, a person dancing with a book, and came up with all of these images, none of which are a person dancing with a book. And so at that point, I turned to AI and I asked the AI feature to generate a picture of a person dancing with a book, and then was able to come up with an image that did illustrate what I was trying to do when the simple search of images didn't help me find what I was looking for.
I'll just share two of my most recent examples. I was tutoring a student a couple weeks ago, and she had a goal of helping a friend at his eye doctor appointment to purchase glasses. And so she speaks Spanish and English, and she was going to translate for her friend. But she said, I don't really know all of the vocabulary for buying eyeglasses. So I asked ChatGPT for a dialogue between an optician and a customer. And it gave me a very long dialogue, but this is just the beginning part of it. And I noticed in it that it used really like specific vocabulary, like types of lenses, so bifocals or progressives. And I thought that's probably a situation that my student would run into. And so I was really pleased with these results, and we were able to practice that vocabulary with this dialogue during our lesson. A second way that I used ChatGPT recently is I'm working on creating some laptops setup videos, and I wanted them to be in Spanish. So I had help translating them, not from AI, but from a real person. But because we worked on them at different times, I noticed that there was an inconsistency. So some videos use the to form, and some videos use the usted form. So I asked ChatGPT to find those spots for me and help me keep it consistently in the usted form. And you can see here that I found 8 different spots. Spoiler alert, there were more, but I'm going to talk about this example again in just a little bit. So as we move on today, we have framed the rest of our presentation with some best practices in mind. And it feels a little silly for me, who is just kind of getting started using AI, to tell you what the best practices are, especially since AI seems to be evolving so quickly. So I'd like to sort of put an asterisk by this and say that these are some current best practices and what Anna and I have noticed works best for us. So the very first one to keep in mind is the idea that we want to put our goals before the tools. Oftentimes, I think we get really distracted or blindsided by shiny new objects. And it's cool to try out ChatGPT or to try out an image generator. But as you could hear in Anna's example, sometimes it's not an efficient process if we're wasting so much time looking for or trying to get AI to create a compass rose, but we can just as easily find it in an internet search. So remember what your goals are. And if your goals are to help you make your work more efficient and AI isn't quite doing that for you, don't feel like you have to stick to it. The next best practice is the 80-20 approach. So AI can help you make your work more efficient, and it can do about 80% of what you're looking for. But human beings are still essential to the process. So you want to think that you are at least 20% of that process. And your expertise, your knowledge is essential for the prompting part. So what are you asking AI to do? And for reviewing the results when you get them. So that includes checking for bias and accuracy and protecting privacy while you're prompting. And so we'll go over these steps and how to put that 20% in the best way that we know how so far. So the first part is the prompting part. When you ask an AI tool to generate something for you, you're going to get out what you put in. So the more specific and clear you can be in your prompt, the better result you're going to get. This is some guidelines from, it comes from the Open Prompt book from Camp GPT, which was a world education project. They assembled adult educators and they worked on how do we use AI and what's the best way to prompt AI. And this is what they came up with, some guidelines. So when prompting AI, if you can tell AI what its role or your role is, what is the action you want it to perform, give it some context. An example is always helpful. And then what format do you want the results in? And so you can see here on the right an example. The role, you are an instructor in a community-based ESL program. Write a rhythm and blues song about shopping at the grocery store that teaches these parts of speech: verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs. In the song, make explicit connections between a part of speech and its function and give some examples. Since these are beginners, keep the language simple and straightforward with no idioms or figurative language. Example, on the shelf, above, below, behind the can, prepositions show us where. Now we have a plan. Okay, so just notice how detailed this prompt is. And the more details, like I said, probably the better results. You will have access, when you receive these slides, you'll have access to this open prompt book so you can see other examples as well. But I'll show you a second example, which doesn't necessarily use all of these, but it does combine them. So you can see here, the action is write a 3-paragraph story, but embedded in that action is the format that we wanted in, right? The 3-paragraph story. And then the story should use past perfect tense. So all of the things that you're looking for, all of the criteria should be listed in your prompt.
If you are copying and pasting or putting information into AI, asking AI to help you, rewrite something or create a document or an activity, what you don't want to do is include personal information in those prompts. So you wouldn't want to include information about your students. And then you also don't want to include information or documents that are not yet publicly released. So particularly when you upload like a large language into an AI system like a large language model, the content of those documents can become part of the model's data pool, essentially contributing to its knowledge base and allowing the AI to draw information from those documents when generating responses to future prompts or queries. So the specific way this happens depends on the platform you're using and whether the upload is used for training or just for context within that single interaction. So just be aware that uploading sensitive information to a large language model or LLM could potentially be accessible to other users depending on that platform's privacy practices. So keeping all of the things we just covered in mind, we are going to do an activity. Jamie is going to launch a poll here in a moment, and we would like you to read through this scenario and identify which would be the best prompt for that scenario based on the tips we just went over. As you're completing this, you do need to scroll down to the bottom to get to the point where you can click submit. So we'll take about 4 minutes to read through and submit responses.
All right, I'm going to end the poll and I will share results. So the very first question, you are hiring a part-time social media specialist. Ask AI to help you write a job description. We think the best choice is the third prompt. Your adult and family literacy nonprofit organization is hiring a part-time social media specialist. Write a job description that includes responsibilities, credentials, and a non-discrimination statement. This is the best prompt because it's very specific about what we're looking for in that job post, but it does not share personal information like the name of your executive director or your organization. That's particularly, I think, important when you're thinking about it, asking it to create a job post if the job hasn't been posted already. So I, don't always take the time to read the privacy practices of the AI tools that I'm using, but I like to think, do I want the internet to know this right now? And if the answer is no, then I don't share that information in my prompt. Question 2, you want to create a reading lesson for your adult intermediate ELL class about storing food safely. And the best prompt, Anna, you're going to have to help me remember this because I was having a hard time reading them while the poll was going. It looks like most people said the middle one. Write a paragraph about how to store food safely, include sources. The text should be at an NRS level 3 reading level. The reader is an adult English language learner. Include 3 multiple choice comprehension questions with the answer key. I think I'm going to go with the majority here. What I like about this prompt is that it's very specific about the reading level and who the audience is. So the reader is an adult English language learner. And I have an example later that I can show you when you don't tell AI that the reader is an adult. Sometimes you run into some problems. When we ask for multiple choice comprehension questions, it's always great to ask AI for the answer key as well. That will save you some time.
I think you covered it all, Jamie.
Great.
So next we're going to talk about checking for bias and accuracy. So here's an example where I asked an AI tool within one of the platforms that Jamie and I use for creating online courses. And I asked for an image of an adult reading tutor. And these are the 4 images it generated for me to choose from. I see, Robin, I think you may have spotted it, but if you can see what might be problematic about these images or one of these images, please type it in the chat. Are you comfortable using any of these images, or is there something? Ah, the double-bodied but one-headed person. If you look at the image in the bottom left, that person is missing a head. So yes, that is a very obvious, well, though I didn't see it, but that's a very obvious omission. And then I see, well, yes, they're sitting kind of close for a tutoring session, right? Yes, for those of you who didn't see it, I didn't see it either. And not in a classroom and environment, or it doesn't really look like a library. So you could certainly ask AI again, clarifying, what environment you want it to be in. Maybe say, please have them practicing social distancing, or, something like that. You could revise your prompt. But it's always good to check. Hands are notorious for being not very good in when AI generates images of people. So that's something I always check. But yes, I will admit I missed the missing head altogether. Okay, so now that's talking about like accuracy. Marcia points out the bias here, and so they are all white people. In some cases, somebody pointed out that it might be good to have a second person in the picture. So yeah, they look like they're on a Target ad. Yeah. So to speak a little bit more about bias, on the next picture, I asked for a doctor walking in the hallway. So here we have 4 images here of a doctor walking in the hallway. I have found my own experience has been when I am looking for images of people, I have found a lot of ethnic diversity in what I have received. However, I haven't found a lot of age diversity with age. And so I have had to prompt more specifically to get a more diversity in ages. In this particular image, it might be problematic because I may feel like and they're all men, right? Or that they're all older individuals. One thing that I have done in doing my prompting is asked for uh, somebody with an assistive device, because another thing I have found problematic when I've used AI to generate images is I have not seen diversity in abilities. So here I said, doctor walking in hallway with assisted device. So my recommendation here is just to evaluate the images that you're seeing, especially if you're pulling a lot of different images that you're putting into something you're creating, whether it be lessons, and to think about, look at overall what you're putting together and what groups may not be represented. You want to make sure your students or your community, whoever your audience is, sees themselves represented in those images. And a lot of times you just specifically need to ask the AI tool you're using for what you're looking for. So you may have to say an older individual or using an assisted device. I have typed in what race I'm looking for. So sometimes you do just need to explicitly say in your prompt asking for the diversity. Carlene asks, what if you entered DEI? I have not had any experience in doing and putting in a general comment like that. I can only speak to, I have been tried to be as specific as I could be in my prompts in adding what I'm looking for. Does anybody else have any experience typing in DEI? I think, Carlene, that could be something you could play around with and just see, how the results are for you.
Another example that I'll just share is more of a text-based example. So instead of asking for images, I asked ChatGPT to create a text about Martin Luther King Jr. I wanted it written at an NRS level 1. And I asked for it to include quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. And so this is the result. I don't necessarily want to read the whole thing to you, but let's just look at it. You notice anything that you might make you uncomfortable or hesitant to share this with a learner? I'll tell you that to me, it's fairly accurate. I don't see any glaring inaccuracies in Martin Luther King Jr.'s life here. What I did notice is that it feels a little glossed over, like the issues and what he stood for. And then I realized there's not one place in here where it mentions that he's a Black man. And that is incredibly important to his identity and to his struggle. So I would consider that a bias of omission. So it's important to notice, what is AI not including? That goes for the images too. When we asked for a doctor, what did we not get, right? So I did have to correct AI and clarify what I was asking for. So I told it, revise the text to include Martin Luther King's identity as an African American. And so you can see in the very first sentence that was included, but then also we get this additional statement here, which I think is going to make it clearer to a reader what Martin Luther King's fight was about. So as we've been showing these examples of bias and inaccuracy, Anna and I have been mentioning ways to what to do when AI doesn't get it right. Okay, so one thing that you can do is always clarify and correct in your prompt, and literally ask AI to check its work. So I'll show you an example of when I did that. So we're back to the translation that I had in Spanish, but it was inconsistently using the to and the usted forms. So when I asked for it to find those for me, it found 8 places. And then I said, did you miss any? So you can literally say that to AI. Check your work. Did you miss any places where the to form is used in this script? And lo and behold, it said to me, you're right to ask me to double check. I'll carefully review this document again. And instead of 8, this time it found 23 places. So I highly encourage you to ask AI to check its work. Another strategy is to circumvent, and that's a little bit vague, but I'll show you with this example that I stumped ChatGPT once. Here it is. So I was creating an activity. It was a health literacy activity, and it was a fill in the blank. So these numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, were places where somebody was going to fill in vocabulary. And I said, could you adapt the activity for a 2nd grade reading level? So this is what it gave me, but I was uncomfortable with the expression ask a grown-up because I was going to give this to an adult learner. So I prompted redo for an adult who reads at a 2nd grade level. And you might notice here, there is a blank spot here. What happened in real time is that I got that spinning wheel of death, and ChatGPT just never gave me a response, and I had to close it down and come back the next day. And so this is how I circumvented, because it just was not understanding this prompt. So I said again, redo for an adult who reads at the 2nd grade level, but then I had to specifically say, remove advice to ask a grown-up. The reader is a grown-up. And so it did eventually correct, but you have to be pretty creative with your clarifications and at times circumvent what it's giving you. And then the last strategy that I would recommend when AI doesn't get it right is to adapt existing content. So if you're asking it to generate like purely new original content and you're not happy with what you're getting, go to something that you know and you trust and tell it to adapt that to whatever you're looking for. So for example, if I wasn't happy with the Martin Luther King Jr. bio, I might go to the source, right? So the King Center is a website uh, that's hosted, that's kept up by his wife. So I could copy all of this text that I know is a trusted source. I know it's going to be accurate in a fair representation of Dr. King, and then put it into ChatGPT and say, please adapt this at this specific reading level.
Okay. So we're going to give you an opportunity to practice together using AI and what we've covered this morning and whatever experiences and knowledge you already bring. So the first step to this activity is Jamie's going to launch a poll. And within that poll, you're going to choose which activity you want to participate in. Your answer in the poll is going to determine which breakout rooms you're put in. We're testing Zoom's abilities to help us out this morning. So the first choice is use ChatGPT to create a donor outreach plan. If that's an activity you'd like to do in a small group, choose one. The second choice is use Adobe Firefly to create a photo of a person to accompany an activity about shopping. You do not need to know how to use Adobe Firefly. So if you're interested in trying it out with a small group, you can choose choice 2. So please pick one. This is
Not it,
not
huh?
the right poll.
I don't know if I'm
if,
seeing it then. Let me quick create one. Sorry about this.
so when you go into the room, there will be, hopefully we'll have it, the rooms should be about the size where we'll have a Wisconsin literacy staff member in the room with you too to help guide you. We want you all to try the tools out, but if you're not able to pull the tool up on your computer or your phone or another device, that's okay, because the Wisconsin literacy staff in the room will be able to help you as well. While Jamie's working on setting that up, does anybody want to share any questions or any experiences? You could either do it in the chat or unmute yourself. All right, here we go. So choose which activity you would like to do in your small group. I do not believe you need an Adobe subscription to use Firefly. Wow, we are pretty evenly split here.
Anna, while I was making the breakout rooms, I may have missed this, but did you talk about the checklist?
I did not. Thank you. So Jamie is putting a checklist into the chat to use, and this is going to outline a lot of what we talked about today. So if you click on the link in the chat, this is AI checklist docx. Click on that and you will be able to pull that up to guide you, and the Wisconsin literacy staff in the room will be able to help you with that too. All right, should we create the breakout rooms?
In the process, just want to make sure that we have. It didn't work the way I wanted it to. We got one person in some of these.
Okay, well, we can try to move people around. And if you're not in the room you chose, we apologize, but invite you to practice this on your own.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I do want to have time for any questions, answers, or tips that we have for each other. But first, I would like to hear from anybody in the rooms, and especially Wisconsin literacy facilitators, if you have any observations or what happened when we prompted AI for those two tasks.
Yeah, Robin and I were both in the room together with our stellar group of people. And our group ranged from, I've never used any of this before, to, oh yeah, I use this all the time. So we did some things. We had the donor project, and we told AI what it needed to do and what we were looking for, and it just spit all kinds of great stuff. We were just thinking we were going to go back and maybe plug in some numbers, amounts of money we wanted, but we ran out of time. But Crystal, who was in our group, had used this extensively and even pointed out some of the cool little tools that come with ChatGPT, where you can copy and paste it to a Word document, or you can tell it, yes, this is what I wanted, or no, this wasn't. So we had a great group.
Thank you. Feedback from other rooms.
Hello, my name is Khadija. I'm working at Casa Guadalupe. So we never used that, but like from now, I think we will use it because it's helpful.
Wonderful, thank you.
We had it interesting in our group, and for my group, Claire or Heather, if you want to chime in, or Ashley. So we used a couple different prompts, but one of ours was images of an Asian grocery store. And for Claire, what popped up was a rabbit with kind of some imagery of some grass and a piece of bamboo. But then Heather was able to get a grocery store that looked like kind of like a Trader Joe's. So even as we tried to keep kind of manipulating the word to market instead of a store, it was just odd how that not hopped. Yeah, I guess I mean hopped to that conclusion with that prompt. But that was very interesting. That was just something that we were doing right at the end.
Thank you for sharing that.
We also did a Muslim woman grocery shopping at an American style grocery store with her toddler and her husband. And we were able to get pretty good images, but the faces were kind of weird, or the hands would be weird. Especially the faces for the mom was usually pretty good, but some of the kids look really creepy.
We had the ChatGPT donor outreach plan, and we were just getting through the amount of content that it provided. So we asked for a narrative with a bulleted to-do list with 10 action steps, and it was looking pretty good. There was a lot of content there. So I think what became clear is that that format part is really important, because Pamela had shared that you can really get a lot of information, a lot of output, if you are sort of open-ended in what you're looking for. So I like that it was suggested that we have 10 action points, but still the narrative was pretty thorough.
Thank you for sharing that. We hope, Anna and I hope that checklist can be useful to you. We did share it in the chat, but we'll also give you a link to it again in our follow-up email. Yeah, Heather, go ahead.
And I just
Just out of curiosity, I added to my prompt a photo of Tammy Baldwin shopping in an Asian grocery store, and it came up with 5 different people of different genders. So I was just curious if it, new public figures, and it seems not to. So.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
So we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you for attending this session. The next session is Calling All Bookworms. What's the best book you have ever read? And it begins at 11 o'clock. So you have a nice half hour for a break. And if you enjoyed this session, join us for the Big Share on Tuesday, March 4th, a fun day of virtual events and online giving that allows Wisconsin Literacy to offer this type of programming. And I also want to note that Kimberly is putting in the chat some information, just brief information, and a link to the Herb Kohl Foundation and a grant that they reached out to us about that they believe would be appropriate for community-based literacy programs. So please check that out as well, the Herb Kohl Philanthropies. So thank you, and we'll see you all later today.